our podcast is doing pretty good. Some YouTube shorts are doing especially well.
Hey,
One of them has over 1,000 views.
that is a number.
Yes.
It's a good number. It's a good number.
Yeah, and I mean it's short, so they showed it at the short speed, and people did not scroll past it, is what that means
Yes,
mostly.
yes, indeed.
But
Yeah,
yeah, that's cool.
that's cool.
Hello and welcome to the Fast and Broken podcast, where we take a critical look at the fast-moving world of tech and online culture. I'm Carly Rector, a software engineer and startup founder who feels like I'm crazy sometimes for the amount of AI discourse from radically different sides of the spectrum that I hear day to day.
And I'm Teresa Kramer. I'm an MBA student, a project manager, and an amateur voice actor who is trying to get a little bit less AI in my life and more experiencing, like human interaction and art made by real people, which I always find delightful.
Yes, real people are great.
Real people are awesome.
Yes. We have a good set of topics today. We had 2 weeks off recording since our first 3, which means we have a backlog. So we're going to talk this week about prediction markets a bit, and then into our 2/3 AI standard content, I guess. We're going to talk some about AI copyright infringement lawsuits and updates, in particular updates on Anthropic settlement, which we talked about last time.
Mhm.
And then we're just going to do sort of a general overview of AI philosophies, just like the state of discourse, because I feel like that's a good baseline for a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about.
Well, let's get into it.
What do you know about prediction markets, if anything?
I know nothing, so
All
please
right.
educate me.
So prediction markets are kind of a crypto thing. They're big in the crypto space because you use crypto for a lot of them, but they're not necessarily, they don't require crypto. The concept doesn't require crypto. The basic idea is just it's a market where you bet on basically anything. So there's a few of them. Polymarket and Kalshi are the 2 biggest ones. Kalshi is the only one that is currently legal in the US, although Polymarket will be soon probably because Trump is into it. Trump Jr. is actually an advisor for both Polymarket and Kalshi, I think now, which is cool considering they're competitors, and I'm not sure you're supposed to do that. But let's see. Let's actually I'll go pull up Kalshi and you could get a sample. Let's see. The top one on Kalshi here is government shutdown this year, which is currently 55% yes. New York City mayor election is a big one that we're going to talk about. Wealthiest person in the world this year is a question. That's actually news that just came up.
Yeah, that recently changed hands as of time of recording.
Yes, as of time of recording, Larry Ellison is there, although Elon Musk is still 57% winner in this market. So so there's a lot of like politics stuff, there's sports stuff, Emmy Award for drama series, question mark, best AI this month. I don't know how they're resolving that one. Top artist on Spotify this year. Hurricane Gabrielle category, Republican nominee, highest temperature in Austin tomorrow. Just like anything, basically. What will Mr. Beast say during his next YouTube video? Just whatever you want, basically.
Very random stuff, yeah.
Those are the 2 big ones. Manifold Markets is another one that is not a real money platform. That one's just like a play money, game money thing, but the same sort of structure. And a lot of people are really big into this concept, with the idea being it's a way to like get a real measurement of like public sentiment or like an accurate prediction of how things are going to happen, because if you're forced to put money on it, you cannot just like say whatever, or you can, but you're putting money on it and you're incentivized to be right more. And you're incentivized to spend money on the things where you believe that you're going to be right, which theoretically correlates with being right, at least somewhat. So the idea is you can look at like the prediction markets for elections and get some better idea on who's going to win than someone who just goes out and polls 2,000 people or whatever, who A, may not say their real answers, B, might not be representative, or might not represent people who are actually likely to go vote, or like any of those other things that you could say that are just normal go out information gathering things.
Yeah.
So that's the pitch for people who are excited about prediction markets.
Mm.
There are a lot of the reasons why you might not like them also.
Yeah.
Um,
I was like noodling on those in my head as you're saying, because like, yeah, like I was a political science major back in college, and so I did in fact do like some political opinion surveying as part of my classes, and it's like, and like just general statistics, and it's like, yeah, sure, you know, those things are true, but it's like you are changing your sampling bias, like you're trading one sampling bias for another, I feel like,
yeah,
in
and
relying on
there
these
are some other
markets.
things too. One of which is one thing that especially Kalshi used for a lot is sports betting. But it's not
Yeah,
sports betting because sports betting is officially legally regulated by the states, and
right.
have had many lawsuits in which they have won to say that they are not doing sports betting. What they are doing is commodities futures contracts or
Oh my
event
god.
contracts or whatever you want to call them. So they're
Ooh.
technically regulated by commodities laws,
Mhm.
which is an interesting thing. And that has federal sort of like
Yeah.
superseding. So basically, no one can regulate Kalshi on the state level because they're um,
Yeah, they're like
have
under the FTC if they're doing like commodities trading and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
CFTC, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
So yeah, that's which is an interesting place to be in, because it's you would think that wagering on a event futures contracts for a sporting event and sports betting would be basically the same thing, but legally they are not, and therefore Kalshi gets away with doing a bunch of stuff that sports betting platforms cannot, um,
Mhm.
including better tax treatment at this point, which is
Yeah.
interesting. So there's all of that kind of stuff, but there's also been some interesting events in the past couple weeks that I put on our list here to talk about specifically. One of which is that there was a prediction market for will Taylor Swift get engaged in 2025, which did happen recently.
Did happen recently, yeah.
And a lot of people noticed that there was actually a big spike in trading a few hours before the official announcement, or like the day before,
Oh,
implying that
interesting.
someone was insider trading on this, on their knowledge of Taylor Swift's engagement, because she did actually get engaged a few weeks
Yeah.
beforehand and then announced it later. So someone knew ahead of time and was trading on
Mm.
that knowledge. And
Yeah, because like if you're making it futures commodities trading, if you're trading with insider knowledge, then doesn't that then kind of get you into a legal sort of jeopardy that
so
you
that's an
wouldn't get
interesting
into?
question. That's one
Yeah.
of the interesting questions we get to talk about here. And my perspective on here is basically formed 100% by reading Matt Levine's Money Stuff newsletter, which has a lot to say about the stuff that's interesting. But basically, the thing is, if it was Travis Kelce or Taylor Swift who did that thing, it might not be insider trading based on
Mhm.
commodities laws,
Yeah.
because the way that you're supposed to deal with commodities is if you're like a candy company and you need to buy cocoa futures or something
Mhm.
like that to hedge if the price of cocoa is going to go up a whole bunch. If you know you as a company are going to need to buy a whole bunch of cocoa in 6 months because you have a big project coming up, and therefore you know that's probably going to drive the price up, that doesn't mean that you can't buy on that knowledge. That's why you're doing it. Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
that's the point of the market. And
Mhm.
so that's the law that is regulating this. So technically, if you're trading on your own information, that
Yeah.
is probably not illegal. Um,
Right, right. But if like somebody heard from a friend of a what have you through like, you
mhm.
know, channels that are not publicly available, seems like that is where you
Yeah,
get into
and then
dicey
there's some question
territory.
about like whether Kalshi has like a policy against insider trading or Polymarket or
Mm,
whatever, on the platform, and that is a little bit unclear also. Where some of them want to encourage insider trading because like the insiders are the people who actually know the answer to the question, and if the
yeah.
goal of the prediction market is to get the most accurate answer to the question, then you want the insiders to trade.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's kind of the point. And what you're trying to do is incentivize people to feel like they're more inside than other people and therefore can make some money off of it.
Yeah.
Um, which has led to some other interesting stuff.
Oh,
The most recent one I have on this list is Bill Ackman talking about the New York City mayoral race, which I
yeah.
don't know if you've been following, but there's been a big push for Eric Adams to drop out.
Mm,
And part of the reason for that you can see if you look at the Kalshi stats on this, which is Currently, Mamdani 81%, Andrew Cuomo 17%, Eric Adams 1%. Below Curtis Silva, who is at 3%. So,
Yeah.
and the general consensus is that it's like that because Cuomo and Adams are both still in the race. And if Adams dropped out, it would become much closer to 50-50 because it would not be pulling the vote away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not the vote
Yeah, it's not like
distribution, this is the
vote
probability of
distribution, it's the
winning.
probability. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, Bill Ackman, hedge fund manager and Twitter conservative personality, posted that Eric Adams should drop out and also that he could get money for dropping out by betting on prediction markets ahead of time before
Oh
he
my
announces
gosh.
him dropping out.
Yeah.
And then that, of course, prompted a whole discussion on like, would that be insider trading? Which
Yeah.
also he probably couldn't make that much money on it, which was a lot of the stuff that Matt Levine talked about here, which is like the Taylor Swift trade could maybe have made a few $1,000s, which
Mm.
is not nothing, but is not like
Yeah,
you're gonna
that's not like material in terms of like fraud and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, like the FTC is not going to go after you for making an extra $1,000
yeah. And so like
usually.
you would have to, and there's just like not enough people buying these contracts to
Mm-hmm.
for Eric Adams to make millions of dollars by dropping out of the race or whatever Bill Ackman was suggesting here.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I'm looking at even the New York City mayor election, the total series volume on that is only like it's 23 million, it looks like. Some of these are very like this is $25,000 in total in some of these like smaller markets,
Mm-hmm.
even the ones that are up on their trending. To kind of like the discussion we were having earlier in terms of this is a better measure of public sentiment. Yeah, it's like maybe that's a better statistical representation, but if like the government shutdown has $5 million invested in it, it'd be very interested to see like how many people are represented by that $5 million,
Mm-hmm.
and then what is the demographic slice of people who are on this platform, because like that's really like what my brain kind of sits on with this whole like well, one, it's like gambling is kind of a curse in our society these days. The human brain is not really like set up well to handle gambling. But also like just in terms of the like this is going to give us better inferences about what people in the public sentiment feel. It's like, well, in order to believe that, show me a dollar amount, but how many people does that dollar amount
Mm-hmm.
represent in terms of like who all is participating, and what is their it's like what are their demographics, because it's like this could very well just be like, oh yeah, well, if this is all like white guys from Silicon Valley participating in these markets, which if I had to, put down a call sheet, like if there's a call sheet for who's doing
Yes.
call sheet, I'd put it on white guys from Silicon Valley. But like that would then mean that like we're not really polling public opinion here then. We're polling the opinion of people who are on call sheet, which
Mm-hmm.
is a specific sub-demographic, and that's why I don't think that this is quite like you're not going to quite measure this against opinion polling, because like opinion polling is something where they do deliberately make an intentional effort of actually gathering representational populations for whatever issue they're trying to decide upon.
The Silicon Valley argument to that would be, yes, that's measuring opinion, but this is measuring the people who are more right. Which not necessarily because they're the Silicon Valley people, but because again, like the idea is you will wager money on the things where you are confident of being right for whatever reason, and you will wager money in the proportion to the amount that you believe that you are right.
Yeah, no,
so.
like theoretically, I would poke on that theory really hard, because
like
I think that I want to say there is probably some like not an unreal measure of like actual statistical evidence to show that people aren't actually that good at putting like, it's like, sure, you're willing to put money down on it, but I don't think that actually makes you more right. Like, I'm pretty sure that there's psychology studies there that like, especially when it comes to gambling, which is what this is, it's like, you're not actually more right. Just because you think you are does not make you more right.
Yeah, well, there's also the other question about like, are the people who are doing this gamblers, or are there people who are sincerely trying to predict events? Because I think mostly the latter thing, because like you're not actually making very much money off of these things.
Yeah.
But another thing that Matt Levine talks about is because they're becoming really big in sports betting, they're going to bring more just gamblers to the platform to do their sports betting, and then maybe they'll toss in a few dollars on the other things while they're there more often.
Yeah.
Maybe. So there's that.
Yeah, especially like, again, to the public opinion side of this thing. It's a question that can't really be answered without us having more information about who these people are and what is the makeup of the people who are participating in these things. Because it's also like, what is it? Is it Dunning-Kruger effect? The one where it's like what you think you know about a thing compared to what you actually know about the thing and your level
Hmm.
of expertise. And so it's like, um, yeah, like I would be willing to bet that there are probably a lot of people out there who think they know a definitive enough information to put money down on like the mayoral election of New York, or is the government going to shut down, or things like that, who actually do not have enough information to really make a sound judgment call on either of
Yes.
those events.
Yeah. So
So,
there's definitely some broad questions about how predictive prediction markets actually are and how to make
mhm.
them more predictive if that's what you want. But
But
there's
do
also been
you
a lot of
want
reporting.
that? No.
There's also been a lot of reporting about them being right about things. For example, did predict that Trump was elected in
Yeah,
2024,
yeah.
which polling did not. So that's one of the big.
Mm, polling did not is like I think saying
Okay, that's a little bit
yeah, because
broad, but yeah,
polling on the last election was pretty tight. Like when you got right down to looking at like good robust modeling. So it's like being like, oh yes, they predicted Trump would win and polling didn't. It's like no, 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 this election was totally within a polling margin of error.
yeah,
So
yeah. That was how some of it was reported though. So.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
which doesn't
so
mean it's
yeah,
right, but
so
yeah.
then the one more reason you might not like this is that it creates some bad incentives depending on some of the trades that you have here. For
Mm-hmm.
example, back when the LA wildfires were going on, there was one or prediction for like, will the fire get to neighborhood or something like that.
Oh God.
And not only is that kind of like tasteless, but that's one of the
Yeah.
things where it's like that's easy to make be the case if you were
Yeah.
interested in that. And so it's like an arson market now.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just go set a fire, then you could make whatever money that you bet on it,
Right.
etc. And similarly, these past couple weekends ago, when there was a lot of rumors about Trump being dead, the betting markets for whether Trump would be, quote, out as president this year spiked by a few
Mm-hmm.
percent because that's
Mm-hmm.
a betting market that also happens. So
Yes.
you could also hypothetically affect the outcome of one of these and make some money off of it if you wanted
Yeah.
to do that. And that's questionable.
Oh, incredibly questionable. Yeah, and it's in those situations, I suppose it's we should be grateful that the what is it like the monetary value on these markets are not super big, because it's like yeah, the if the monetary value of like, oh, is this neighborhood going to burn down, only like several $1,000s, it's like, does it really incentivize you to burn something down to make $5,000? And it's like, I would argue, no,
One would
really,
hope no,
no. Yeah,
but as these get bigger, those numbers get bigger. So,
yeah, yeah,
and there's a lot of question about like, should you be allowed to do that?
yeah. That
um,
that is dubious, very dubious.
yeah, and again, there's been a big push from the current conservative establishment to allow these more than they are already. Because polymarket, like I mentioned, is not allowed in the US currently,
Hmm.
but Trump's going to bring it in and a lot of
Yeah,
push for less regulation on these things. So
yeah.
that's there's some interesting stuff going on there. There's a lot of people who are like, this is the future of news. And I do see like,
Mm,
here's the Kalshi or here's the poly market odds on this event reported fairly often in newsletters that
yeah,
I follow at this point. So
yeah.
it's like it's become a thing, at least to that extent already.
It's very much, it's like, I don't think I care about this thing as long as it stays small. I think I care about this thing more as it becomes more like, if it gets bigger, I care about it a lot more, I think, is kind
Hmm.
of my thought process on it. Because it's like, okay, sure, if this thing just stays like I'm like just a stats weirdo and I just want to kind of like make predictions based on, it's like the information that I have about different events. I'm like, okay, sure. And especially because like even like looking at these things, it's like, oh yeah, it's like I can vote I can spend 32 cents on if Gavin Newsom is going to be the Democratic nominee in 2028. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, sure, that's not a lot, but I feel like, you know, the bigger it gets, the more concerning it becomes.
Yeah, I think the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it has gotten substantially bigger in the last year or two.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially because Trump took over and has unregulated a bunch of stuff, and therefore they can operate more freely.
Yeah.
But also just has gotten a bunch more users, and people have become a lot more interested in reporting on the odds on Kalshi for whatever thing, because
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing to report on. Like, even if you're saying it's not predictive or representative, it's still interesting to see in
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
it's still
of
it's still a data point. Like, I will not argue it is not a data point. It is 100% a data point. But like, my worry is, yeah, to your point, like, the influential amount of it when it's like when you have money on the line, and in terms of like changing how people behave, and also then like people already misrepresent data points, like up, down, and sideways. And people, even people who really should know better, like about
yep.
misrepresenting data points, will misrepresent data points. And I worry about it not being a force for any kind of good. But I also, it's like, I think it's feel like it's a bit premature to say exactly like what it's going to do or how it's going to change, you know, the way that
Yeah,
people behave.
that's definitely, I think, where I'm at with it, which I think it's an interesting concept. I'm not sure I
Hmm.
believe it's the future of news,
No.
but it is something that I know many people are very interested in and are pushing for various reasons, and
Yeah.
it has a lot of weird dynamics around
Hmm.
how it's regulated and how it affects things and what
Yeah.
kind of things you can bet on that I am very curious to watch the outcome of.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like in terms of it being like the future of news, I feel like that is a logical kind of a logical point for that to sort of flow from, where it's like, well, Fox News is owned by billionaires and all the other news companies have an agenda. And so I'm going to get information from like what
Yeah.
I feel is like the people. But it's like,
Yeah,
but
well, and
yeah.
I think I read an article about one particular guy who made a bunch of money on
Hmm.
betting on Trump on Polymarket. And he actually did a whole bunch of actual research, like his own
Yeah,
polling
yeah.
and like his own get data gathering in different ways than traditional news industries do. And there was some actual like some interesting approaches that he had there. So the
Hmm.
idea is there, like if you are making money off of being right at these things, then you can fund things
Yeah.
to get those answers theoretically reporting with the incentive of being right because that's when you get your money.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like how like with the sports betting and like where sports betting is legal, the people who tend to actually really make money off of sports betting are the people who have like these very complex
Yep.
models built off of their own research and stuff like that, that like accounts for like wind speed and
Yes.
temperatures and all sorts of
Yeah.
different factors to determine who's going to win a baseball game. And so yeah, I feel like it's that kind of thing. And so it's like we're kind of at that point in time then depending upon the altruism of these people who develop these very accurate models for like depicting these things to share that information, because like by making it an economic market, essentially you are disincentivizing them to share how they arrived at their conclusions.
Hmm.
And because it's now something that makes them more money, and why
Yes.
would they want to tell anybody else how they
Makes
made
them
all this
more money the
money?
more wrong everyone else is. Whereas,
Right,
like,
exactly,
theoretically,
exactly.
journalism does better as everyone is trying to report on something. So,
Yeah, yeah, because like if a big story is a big story, then you want to go and like find what everybody else is saying about it. I was like um doing some research for a class on the California wildfire regulations that came out, I think, a couple of years ago, that essentially forced insurance companies to publish their risk data models for
hmm.
wildfire risk. The companies themselves are disincentivized to do that because it gives their competitors an advantage, which is why you don't see most insurance
Yeah.
companies publishing their risk models for that sort of thing. But publicizing the information and having a more collective like risk model database improves the accuracy of those models, especially for things that are very hyper local. The competing economic factors in this thing are do not incentivize anybody to share the information that helps them make a good prediction. So like
Yeah.
claiming that this is like for the good of society, I feel is very counterintuitive to just the basics of economics. It's like if you have an advantage, you're going to want to keep the advantage private so that you can continue to use it.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff there around the libertarian perspective that the free
Mm-hmm.
market will just like improve everything because
No,
everyone will do it. And it's
no.
like, no, there's a lot of cases, in fact, where your individual incentive to make money is not
Mm-hmm.
aligned with the overall societal improvement
There's so many
incentive.
cases of that. Like, oh my, like,
Yes.
come on. You do not need to look far to find cases where the free market fails to operate in a way that, like, betters society. It's like, hello? That's
Yeah.
so annoying. Regulation is necessary.
Yeah. Definitely. I feel like we definitely need at least some more regulations on these things, especially on the
Yeah.
ones where you're literally incentivizing crimes.
Yeah. Definitely that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We can segue to our next topic, which is copyright infringement.
Woo!
We've mentioned last time Anthropic had settled the lawsuit from a bunch of authors for
Mm-hmm.
their books. We didn't have a number at that time. We have a number now. The number is
Yeah.
1.5 billion, which works out to about $3,000 per book in the 500,000 book data sets that they were accused of using.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that each person is going to get $3,000. It's not really clear how that is going to be distributed, but that's sort of like the
Yeah. If
scale that
it's
is.
yeah, if it's class action, then it should be like dependent upon the number of claims that come through. I feel I'm rusty on how class action
Yeah,
lawsuits
I
work.
mean, well, and they specifically, this settlement has not actually been approved by the judge yet because the
Mm-hmm.
judge was like, please provide some more information on how you're doing this. And they're like, it's actually kind of complicated because what if there are multiple authors of each book and how does this money get distributed? And the class dynamics are sort of not decided there at all, and
Mm-hmm.
they haven't put them through yet. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of questions there, I think, that will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Um,
A good chunk of money though, like good on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent chunk of money. It is the biggest such settlement that has ever happened before, which is
Mm-hmm.
substantial. But
Yes.
I did also want to put it in the context of like sort of like we were talking about with the Microsoft Copilot voice acting thing. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money, but like $3,000 for a book is not that much money. Like for a giant company stole your book and used it for their own
Yeah.
purposes again. And if again, if it's like, well, all the big AI companies stole all of the books, and like even if everyone has to pay you $3,000, all like four or whatever of the big AI companies, oh great, I have $12,000, and now no one is ever going to buy my book again. And
Yeah.
like maybe that's good for some of them, but many books make more than that normally.
Yeah.
So
Oh, no, yeah. There is like yeah. I think that even in the terms of like because like was it this is a weird little segue, but like the publishing industry has this very bizarre sort of like lingo that they use for describing the size of a book deal without disclosing the size of the book deal, where it's like if they say it is a nice deal, that means it's anywhere from $1 to $49,000. If it's a very nice deal, it's 50,000 to 99,000. A good deal is 100K to 250. A significant deal is 251 to 499, and a major deal is 500,000 and up. So
yeah,
this does not even qualify, is only qualifies as a nice deal for those
yes,
authors,
nice
unless there's
deal for
some
these
other
authors.
distribution. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And also another sort of like benchmark to benchmark it against is some other stats that Anthropic released last week-ish, which is that they recently closed a $13 billion fundraising round at
Mm-hmm.
a $183 billion valuation for the company. So, and that their current annual revenue run rate is $5 billion. So
Yeah.
at that rate, like 1.5 billion is also, again, still a pretty substantial chunk of money, but it's only like, whatever, like 3 or 4 months of revenue at their rate.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, that's about like 20% of their annual run rate, which is like like not nothing, but given that they're probably using these things for more than a year, that
Yeah,
seems
and
low.
again, part of the settlement is also they have to destroy the data of these books and not use them for
So
anything again, stuff like that. But I think they actually already did that, or I don't know if they like literally deleted them, but they have not been using them for a few years now. They
yeah,
used them
yeah.
2021, 22, I think. I would have to look it
Mm.
up, but around that for a while in their initial development, and then they stopped, presumably because they knew it was a liability issue, and therefore knew that. But I think this is a really good example of move fast, break things, and then pay for it later, and then it's fine
Yeah.
because it's like you can just break the law at the beginning, and by the time anyone can call you account for it, it's 4 years later, and you're making $5 billion, and you
Yep,
can pay
yep.
for it, and it doesn't matter. And these authors still have to wait until they figure out all the class action settlements to get their $3,000.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just the structural incentives here are just not ideal.
No, yeah. It's kind of like any crime for which the punishment is just a fine or is like it's not a
Is
crime
only a
for the
crime
wealthy.
for
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yes, I like that saying, and I think it's true. And
Mhm.
especially in the startup world, the other term that I like is regulatory arbitrage, which is
Mm.
basically making the thing that you do not illegal because you're doing it in a slightly weird, different way. uh, which is a lot of what crypto tries to do, basically, or prediction markets. You could say in that thing are basically being, well, because we're not doing it exactly like the law says, then we don't have to like actually pay taxes or like be stopped from doing this.
Mhm.
And sort of a similar thing, startups will be like, well, we could sort of like stretch the law or do things that aren't technically great right now in the beginning because we're too small for anyone to care right now. And by the time we're
Mhm.
big enough for anyone to care, we'll be able to just pay people
And
off.
pay the fines.
Basically,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, which
Mhm.
is I don't like that.
No, I don't like it either. Yeah. No, it is very much it's like yeah, I feel like there's this point at which it's like if the enforcement of the statute is not deterring the behavior, then there needs to be like a closer look taken at, you know, how you enforce that statute. I think that there's like other like I'm really mad because this is on the tip of my brain and I am not remembering it accurately, but like there is essentially like this like kind of deferred punishment that a lot of other companies are taking. I'm so mad at myself for not remembering what it's called.
The other thing that I wanted to say that people will
Hmm.
do is there's a lot of attention on big companies to make sure that they're not breaking the laws. Like if you're Microsoft, say, then people are
Hmm.
like looking at you pretty closely. But if
Yeah.
you're a small startup, people aren't. And therefore, if, for example, Microsoft wants to try out a thing that is a little bit edgy from a regulatory perspective, they simply do not do it themselves and invest in a startup that is doing it.
Hmm.
Um, which you could argue they did with OpenAI, for example. That sort of thing happens a lot. Not even necessarily just with laws, but like if a big company does not want to take the risk of something, they will just like invest in a startup that is doing it. And then if someone else is doing it, it's not them. So,
Hmm. I don't like it. I have remembered the name of the thing.
yes.
It's a deferred prosecution agreement, which essentially is a voluntary like this. I'm reading off of Wikipedia here, but it's a
Hmm.
voluntary alternative to adjudication in which a prosecutor agrees to grant amnesty in exchange for a defendant agreeing to fulfill certain requirements. And this is something that like is used a lot in corporate law, where instead of actually, you know, fining or punishing corporate entities that commit fraud or, you know, break the law. They're just like, well, we are going to defer prosecuting you on this, but you have to promise us you're going to fix these things in the future. And surprise, surprise, they do not usually actually fix those things in the future. They're like, yeah, okay, we messed up, we'll fix it. Just don't prosecute us for it. We'll fix it later. And then it just kicks the can down the line.
And I'm
That's the thing I was thinking about that I'm like, this seems a little shifty. This seems like this is going to get into that sort of weird legal gray area that applies to corporations more and more frequently these days.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that applies to corporations generally, but startups in particular are really big about kicking the can down the line because the thing
Hmm.
about a startup is you're going to be in a drastically different position in like 2 years. So if you
Hmm.
can make sure that people don't know about this copyright infringement for a couple years, or that the legal process takes a couple years, or you get deferred prosecution and have to can worry about it later, maybe you're going to
Hmm.
make 10 times as much money in 3 years and you can just pay for it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you're dead entirely and no one can do anything to you because the company's just gone. Or
Right.
like
Exactly.
you're in a completely different situation that you can deal with it better. And it's like that's
Yeah.
is how a lot of startup stuff works, is basically just like I will keep doing stuff and kicking the can down the line, and eventually either it will all come to a point that I can work it out because I will be
I will have
massively
the money.
successful and making tons of
Yeah.
money, or everything will just crash down forever and then
This is
whatever.
this is strikingly like hitting a very eerie chord that is strikingly similar to the Enron scandal for me. Because like I was again like I was doing I had a research paper for MBA classes where I was like digging into accounting and the Enron scandal, and what actually like got them into trouble there was essentially was these prepay agreements where they agreed for a trade of commodities, but then had an opt out clause where they could just pay out the amount of the contract, making it like not actually a prepayment for commodities. It was basically just a loan, but like without being booked as a loan. And it
Yeah.
feels like that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a common, not that exact pattern, but the
Hmm.
I will just do something sketchy to fix it and it will solve itself in the future when I'm massively successful is a pattern
Yeah.
generally. That's also a big FTX thing where they were like, yeah, sure, we have $8 billion that we don't know where it went that we owe to customers, but that's fine. We'll just fundraise more money and get it back to them, and then it will all be okay. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the thing about that is like that's crazy. And when everyone heard Sam Bankman-Fried say that when they leaked their Google spreadsheet that was like badly labeled internal count $8 billion or whatever, and we're like, that's insane. That's insane. You can't just be like, I'm going to go ask VCs for $10 billion more or whatever and plug
Hmm.
the hole and it'll be fine. But the thing is, if it had not come out at that time, their spreadsheet had not leaked, and if crypto had not been crashing so dramatically that it like got them to a breaking point to some extent,
Hmm.
they invested in Anthropic. So Anthropic
Yeah.
got super big, and in fact, when the FTX suit finished, they had more than enough money to pay everyone back out of the assets of FTX, because a lot of the assets of FTX were shares in Anthropic or Bitcoin, which went back up a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So had they not been revealed at that time, it would actually have been fine because they would have gotten the money to pay it back at some point, probably. So
I do deeply hate the like the weird pretend money economy that we live in right
yes,
now.
yeah. I definitely
It's
one of the biggest things about having been in the startup venture world for a few years is realizing how much money is just fake to large sections of the economy,
yeah,
even more
yeah.
than before.
Yeah, no, it was always kind of fake, but like, oh man, it's really fake now. We talked about this before. The detachment from reality and the lack of awareness, especially for people like who are in these venture capital circles, just like you don't understand how a majority of people in the world operate because you do not actually experience the same life or the same world as everybody else who's in lower middle class, and it's so unnerving. I do not like the wealth disparity in this country.
Yeah, it's like when you can treat money as a game where you're just
Right.
playing your cards right with your billions of dollars or whatever. You
Hmm.
simply cannot understand people for whom money is a requirement for living because it purchases
Yeah.
goods and services. Like,
Right.
but yes, bringing this back around a little bit, I had to copyright infringement specifically because I had a couple more
Hmm.
there. There have been a couple
Yeah.
more suits announced since
Hmm.
the Anthropic settlement. In particular, a bunch of authors have started class action against Apple for a similar sort of thing, training on
Hmm.
their data. And Warner Brothers Discovery has sued Midjourney over
Yay.
generating images that infringe on their IP. That
Yeah.
adds to a lawsuit that already exists from a few months ago from Disney, Universal
Hmm.
together against Midjourney. So there's a bunch of those pending too. Um, One interesting thing to note about those is that they're kind of focused on different things, where
Hmm.
the one is training specific, and the Midjourney one is much more around the generation side. So there's actually two
Hmm.
different legal questions in the AI copyright infringement domain. One is it copyright infringement to just train on a book, to use, or whatever material, art, to use content for training without having licensed it for that purpose. Is that fair use or is that copyright infringement? The second one is if your generator post-training, like your model exists now, and then it generates something that is copyright infringing, like it, for example, word for word replicates New York Times articles, like in the OpenAI lawsuit from the New York Times, or generates something that looks basically exactly like Bugs Bunny or
Or
Mario
Mickey
or
Mouse.
whatever,
Yeah.
Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse, like these Midjourney ones do. Is that infringement? I mean, I think that one is clearer in the sense that like it's clearly infringement when it does that, because that's what that is. The question that's more interesting on the generation side is whose fault is that? Is
Yeah.
that the AI company's fault for creating a model that could generate infringing content, or is it the person who prompted it for infringing content and then used it somewhere that like in a way that infringed?
Yeah, because the thing is that like it's not illegal to draw Mickey Mouse.
Yes.
It's like when you get into like transformative works in terms of copyright and stuff like that, it's like it is not illegal to draw a Mickey Mouse. It is illegal to draw a Mickey Mouse and make money off of the Mickey Mouse if it is like if it like and even then it's like it's not strictly illegal to make money off of a drawing of Mickey Mouse. It is only if it is like you are mass producing it.
Yeah, well, there's not strict anything around that. The fair use requirements are like fuzzy by design, and technically can only be decided in a court of law, and has to do with like commercial use and
Right.
transformativeness and a whole bunch of
Right.
other stuff that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
measured like vibes based, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like I'm just thinking of like suppose it isn't like legal codex, it's different like creative properties that I know that have like fan art policies and stuff like that. Like they tend to stipulate is like yeah, it needs to be limited run.
yeah, because the practical
Mhm.
question is the company actually going to sue you for it?
Right, right.
And many companies have helped by telling you exactly when and when they are not going to sue you for it
Yeah.
by setting their own policies. But those are
Yeah.
just like policies that they have set based on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
But
and
yeah.
I think a lot of the way that AI companies want to talk about it is like, okay, yeah, like you could create infringing content with our product, but you could create infringing content with Photoshop if you wanted to.
Right,
Like
right.
that's not our fault. You should, as the user, be making sure that your content is not infringing before you use it in
Yeah.
any way that could be that. Which, if it's like
I
Mickey,
I kind of agree with that, really, because
yeah,
it's
and I
like
think that makes some sense, but it
mhm,
becomes tricky in things like when you're not talking about Mickey Mouse, when you're talking about
right.
some obscure artist who, yes, this generation like replicated their art almost exactly, or this character almost exactly, but the
Yeah.
person who generated it is not going to recognize it.
Mhm.
Like they
Yeah,
didn't do it
yeah.
deliberately, but the AI spit out something that was basically an exact replica.
Right, yeah, and
So,
that's why for me, I feel it is more on the training side, because yeah, you mentioned it's like is it on the generation side or is it on the like
mhm.
the training data side? Like at least for me, it feels like it's more on that training data side because if the AI spontaneously like makes a Mickey Mouse when it has been fed no pictures of Mickey Mouse, I feel like that's a way different story than if you have fed the AI pictures of Mickey Mouse and it makes a picture of Mickey Mouse without being prompted to make Mickey Mouse. Let's say this person does really, really great pictures of like mountainscapes and somebody prompts the AI model to like, give me a mountainscape and it looks exactly like that person's art. At that point in time, it is the fault of the model and it is the fault of your training data because there's no intentionality on the part of the person who is doing the prompting. It's all because you decided to use this person's art to train your
Yeah,
model without any kind of compensation.
AI company counter argument to that would be that that's a matter of guardrails on the generation side, and
Eh,
that you should be making sure your thing doesn't generate anything that exactly replicates things that are in its training data, and that you can do stuff like that, like build your Mickey Mouse detector in or whatever, such that it doesn't do that, or more generally have some fingerprinting of the exact things that are in your training data, and don't and check to make sure that anything doesn't too closely match that. The argument is you can train on stuff, and then as long
mhm,
as you make sure that the model does not regurgitate it, basically, the training part is still fine if you can do
yeah,
that, from a copyright infringement perspective. That's the argument. And like
yeah,
that's sort of the argument that seems to be mostly supported by the rulings that we've seen so far, which is
yeah,
that just training by itself is not copyright infringement. And I
Mm.
think that's probably where it's going to land, because that's kind of what
Yeah.
most of the relevant precedent looks like. The Google Books ruling was the biggest one that's relevant here, I think. That was
I think I've
basically
heard about it. Yeah.
Google Books. Google can search books. They basically were scanning and indexing print books such that you could
Hmm.
go search them. And so they did have the entire copies of all of these books just searchable in Google,
Yeah.
but they were not displaying the full copies of the books to anyone at any point. They were only
Hmm.
displaying like the small excerpts that
Excerpts. Yeah.
matched your search queries. And so that was definitely ruled as fair use. So it doesn't matter
Hmm.
that Google does have the entire copies of these books, um, because they're using it for a useful purpose and they're only showing segments of it to people,
Hmm.
then that's fine. So that was ruled as fine. And like you can make the AI analogy there pretty directly, which is like
Yeah.
if they can train on the whole copies of the books, and as long as they're not outputting more than 2 sentences or without like
Hmm.
citations or whatever, which you could do on the generation side with guardrails, then it's
Yeah.
fine. Like the training part is not the legal issue.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's where I feel like we need actual like we need actual legislation to kind of come in and maybe even that playing field a bit.
I think that's true. And I don't know what that legislation looks like, if it's just saying that's
Yeah.
actually copyright infringement or not. I don't know if that's the best approach or not, because there's a lot of fair use questions about like, okay, if you've ruled stuff like that is not fair use, that kills a lot of other non-AI related things that do similar
Hmm.
things. Like there was actually a post from someone at the Internet Archive being
Mm,
like,
yeah.
let's be careful about pushing for everything being copyright infringement, guys.
Yeah, yeah, because that does. Yeah, no, it's
So,
I like yeah,
yeah.
it's just so it's such a sticky mired thing, but also it's like it's good at least that there is like suits coming against the AI companies, and also especially on the Midjourney side of things that this is coming from companies that have a bit of heft behind them and are are willing to fight that legal battle.
So the last topic is less news related and more just AI primer
Hmm.
stuff, which is basically outlining what the current state of AI discourse is, and or at least how people see it. Which, spoilers, I'm going to outline a whole bunch of factions, and then I'm going to be like, it's stupid that these are the factions, and they all have good points that people should recognize, and also big blind spots that people should recognize, and people should have
Hmm.
more nuanced conversations than this. But
Yeah.
this is how people are thinking of it currently, and sort of how a lot of these discussions are framed. So I think it's useful to talk about a bit. So I think there's two big splits to talk about here. One is the split between the people who actually believe in AI as like radically transformative technology and people who do not. I think we know a lot of people who are on the side of like general progressive online sphere, which is like AI is a joke, AI is a fraud, AI is just like this junk that everyone's trying to push on us, and
Hmm.
it like boils a lake for every time it tries to write you a bad essay. Like that kind of perspective, I think, is
Yeah.
one side of that. um,
Yeah.
which that side has, I think, some points in the sense that like there are some real impacts of AI on the environment. We should be concerned about data centers in global south countries using all the potable water in neighborhoods. And I also do
Yeah.
think a lot of companies are just pushing useless AI features on people when they're
Hmm.
pointless. That is also true.
Yeah.
Um, but I also do think that AI is transformative and can do real things. So there's the other side of it, which is the people who are like, no, AI is amazing. AI is going to change everything forever. And it's going to transform the economy radically and be something that is remakes the world in one way or another. Um, and that's the one that I've talked about making me crazy in the upfront one, because those are two so completely incompatible perspectives to have talking to me daily, because it's just like there's fundamentally just don't understand the other side of it at all. Like people who are on the AI believer side don't even like understand that there are people who like are really actually skeptical of AI or sincerely don't believe that it's a thing that they should care about. They're like, well, they're clearly just scared of AI stealing their jobs and are scared and they therefore don't want to believe it. And it's like, no, I don't think that's the problem.
Mhm.
I think there's some real concerns that they have identified here.
Yeah.
um
Also weird to just be like, oh, they're scared of being unemployed. That doesn't matter. It's like, that seems like a very real concern for a lot of people. I feel like you should maybe give that a little credence.
yeah, I mean, also think yes, that there's a different thing between you, AI is going to take my job, sincere fear, and AI is going to take my job because a bunch of people believe that it can do my job and it can't actually also. Because
Yeah.
that's that if you believe that latter thing, then people are insane. And if you believe that first thing, then like the strategy is different, basically.
Yeah.
Like, because if AI can actually do things that replace a whole bunch of jobs, then we need to figure out what to do about that.
Yeah.
If AI is a huge fraud and people just believe it could do stuff, but it can't actually, then people just need to stop being delusional and the bubble needs to pop and we don't need to worry about it. So, like,
Yeah.
those are two different things. And I think the distinction there is important.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like it's one of those things. Like, feel like kind of to our point of like, people are really bad at statistics. People are really bad at dealing with nuance, and I feel like it's a very nuanced problem.
We'll get into a little bit of the more nuanced view a little bit later.
Mhm.
But first, I
Mhm.
want to talk about the second dichotomy, which is
Mhm.
the sort of split between the people who do believe that AI is transformative. And if you or me and you go to like startup events, the first side, no one even cares about that. They don't even believe that like the people who don't believe in AI at all have points or are worried about it. Like that's not a thing. The question is,
Yeah.
are you on the boomer or doomer side, or like what's your P doom? Which is basically, do you think when we get to AGI, which is this magical AI thing that no one can really define, that is better than humans at everything and is self-aware and can basically like take over and do whatever, is that
Mhm.
leading us to the utopia of pure abundance, or is that the robot apocalypse basically? Or is it allowing people to like create bioweapons that kill the entire world? Like there are many doom scenarios that you could come with up with on the doom side.
Mhm.
So the question is, are you so worried about those doom scenarios that you think we should slow down AI development and be careful with it? Or are you like, no, we should go do this as fast as possible because it's going to solve all our problems and usher in the future of pure abundance?
Mhm.
Um, and those are the sides basically. And and people try to
Yeah.
like draw a little bit more nuance on those on the like we should be careful but not slow down or like etc. But like those that's just like I don't want to say it's a false dichotomy, but it's a really annoying dichotomy to me because in the
Yeah.
discourse that is mostly focused on should we do AI as fast as possible or should we worry about safety, it is only defining safety, like we were sort of talking about with Anthropic, as the
Mhm.
doom scenario, which
Yeah.
is, can people generate novel bioweapons, or is the AI going to take over all the factories and turn us all into paper clips, or
Right. Right. Is
is
this like Terminator levels of doom?
yeah,
Yeah.
um
No,
and
it does feel like it's yeah, the fact that like, I think the fact that these conversations are taking place purely within the world and within the realm of the people who have completely bought into AI and who, kind of to our earlier point, are maybe a little bit detached from like the commonalities and the needs of most of the rest of society, I think is kind of very indicative, and like the weirdly like hyperbolic brush that they are using to paint the world, where it's like,
mhm.
oh yes, this is either a savior or it is our doom, and there is no in between. It just seems very indicative of that detachment from how normal people look at it and interact with the world.
Hold up the argument there a little bit, which I don't really want to, but like to be fair, a little bit. Part of the argument is that for the extremes is that it is an extreme technology, and part of the reason for it being an extreme technology that they will say is that there's like a fast takeoff scenario, which is basically like once you create AI that is good enough, it can make itself better.
Yeah.
And once it can do that, then it just like drastically accelerates its capabilities and becomes like super powerful, super intelligence extremely
Hmm.
quickly. And that will happen suddenly. And we need to have some idea of what's going to happen when that happens and be
Hmm.
ready to deal with it, is the principle there.
Hmm.
Um, which, like, I don't necessarily believe in, but I like that's the
Yeah, I do like not to like not to harken back to Oppenheimer again. Like I saw the Oppenheimer movie like last like whenever it came out, and it was like it was so good. But like I'm just reminded of that moment where they're just like, oh, if we detonate an atomic bomb, could it potentially ignite the atmosphere and burn the entire world? And ultimately, what the conclusion they arrived at was like, no, it won't do that. And it feels like that. It feels like that in a
Yeah,
very
that's an interesting one
interesting
because
way.
like the sort of middle ground field section that is the one that I align closest with is called AI as normal technology, which is
Yeah,
basically saying it's not going to be a super intelligent whatever whatever. It
yeah.
is going to be radically transformative though. Like it's a normal technology in the sense that electricity or the internet are normal
Right,
technologies. Like
right.
they're technologies and they're really important, but they're not going to like they're not like that. And they
Mhm.
actually in their newsletter like yesterday published some clarifications on their big essay, and one of them was why the nuclear bomb analogy that everyone loves for AGI is a bad one in this case,
Mm,
because it's not like you're going to go set off a bomb and then something's going to happen and will be really clear if it's the doom of everything. A lot of people treat it like once you hit this AGI threshold, artificial general intelligence, whatever the super intelligence threshold is, that will be extremely obvious and it will either be doom or whatever. Like it's a crisis point that we're going to hit at some point and we will have
yeah,
to deal with. And that's
yeah.
just really not true because that's not how that works.
No.
Like there's not just suddenly a super powerful AI that can do everything. Like it's a
Right.
gradual process. Like even if you're assuming fast takeoff, which they don't believe is going to happen, and I'm not sure I believe in either for reasons we
Yeah.
can talk about in a sec. Like it's not a singular event the way the atomic bomb is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like, and yeah, just the thought that comes to my mind, it's like, okay, like, even if you do this and you determine, like, oh, wow, it seems like it's crazy and it seems like it wants to kill all humanity, cool. Ostensibly, it doesn't have the ability to, like, control the power to the
Yes.
data center it is contained within, and you can just turn it off.
Yeah,
And
so
it's like,
that's the big point that they make in the AI is normal technology. One of the big points is that there's a
yeah,
big difference between AI having the capability to do something and having the actual
hmm,
power to do something. Like
right,
you have to
right.
give it the physical power to interact in
Yeah,
the world, and you can cut it off from that in the same way that you can cut people off from things. There are
right.
many safeguards that we have built for the world to exist that don't require like convincing the AI to be aligned with human interests, like
Hmm.
psychologically or whatever a lot of the people on the doomer side are trying to do. They talk a lot about AI alignment and how you want to make sure the AI believes in supporting humans and not destroying them, etc. And like,
Yeah.
sure, but also we could just unplug the data center or
Right, right. It's like firewall the data center, unplug it, done. Yeah,
there are many practical things that you can do to enforce safety that are not that
yeah.
and many practical barriers that just sort of like exist in the world that prevent
Right.
an AI from being able to do a whole bunch of things unless we give it that power.
Yeah.
The one of the examples they use in the normal technology article is okay, let's do a simple version of the AI paperclip optimizer thing and say like we tell the AI or like physical robot, whatever we have, to like buy as many paperclips as possible and like
Mhm.
or obtain them in some way. And so it
Right.
decides that the best way to do that is to go steal all the paperclips. And it's like, okay, we could still like physically stop it from stealing the paperclips. Like it still has to go
Mhm.
get them. Like
Right.
there's not like we have ways to prevent people from stealing currently, like because that's a thing that people do. And that are not convince everyone in the world that they shouldn't steal paper clips. Like
Yeah.
that is not a feasible thing to do. That's not a thing that we have taken on as a project, and yet it is
Hmm.
not a major problem. So
Yeah.
um, there's just like there's a lot of existing societal guardrails and structures and stuff like that that
Yeah.
do not enter the sort of like pure logic concept of the AI problem. So
No, yeah. I feel like it's again, it's like it feels like it feels very juvenile because it also feels very much like it's like, well, I saw this in the movies, and so clearly it must be possible. You would think that the people at like the higher level of like debating the impact and capabilities of these technologies would be like thinking a bit more critically than like, well,
well, they're applying a lot more critical thought to that. They just have a
yeah,
lot of preconceptions and ideas of how things work. Sort of the counter to the AI as normal technology, or like the alternative version that came out around the same time by coincidence, is called AI 2027, which is basically someone's fanfic about how the AI takeover is going to happen. But it is just like extensively going through here, and this will happen, and this will happen, and then like et cetera, that gets to like alternately like the world being destroyed or whatever, or etc. So it's like they have thought this through in depth. They just have some assumptions there that I don't
Yeah.
think are true.
Yeah. I definitely don't mean like it's clear that you've thought about this, but I don't think you're questioning your underlying assumptions of your argument in a way that is like has proven the validity of those underlying assumptions. When you are debating, you have to establish like your criterion essentially. Like you have to establish your underlying like factual basis of assumption
Mhm.
of what is the platform we are debating from. And yeah, a lot of these people are just like, well, so this is like accepted fact, and it's like, no, that's not accepted fact.
Yeah.
You declaring it accepted fact does not make it accepted fact.
Yeah,
And
or like they don't
yeah,
even declare it. They just like sort of assume it quietly and make their argument become based on that basis without really acknowledging it in any way.
no.
So yeah, that's the overview of the sort of layout of things. And
Mhm,
I think the main point here is like a few months ago when the AI is normal technology article was released, and even to a certain extent now, this was a unique viewpoint that they
mhm,
felt they had to bring out, because there is basically either AI is a fraud, or AI is going to create super intelligence that's going to revolutionize the world and either bring us radical abundance or doom. And like those are the only there's the two sides of, is AI real, and the two sides of like, is it going to completely destroy us or make everything wonderful forever?
right.
And there is nothing between either of those. It's very
Yeah.
frustrating as a person who does not believe any of those things are true to try and stake out a position in the current world, because you
Yeah.
have to be like, okay, actually, AI can do a lot of stuff better than we can do now. And that, I do think that's actually going to replace a lot of people's jobs, or at least radically change what a lot of people's jobs are going to be.
Right.
And we have to do some stuff about that. And it's probably going to radically transform the economy. I don't think we're going to have a fast takeoff scenario where in 2027 AI is going to take over the world. That's a very different thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, there are real concerns about the costs of AI and the billions of dollars we're sinking into this technology that has a dubious question, and like how much of this is real and how much of this is hype and how much of
Hmm.
this is like wasting energy on something that is not useful. That's
Yep.
all true, and we should also worry about that. It's but like the fact that running an AI model takes a whole bunch of energy does not mean we should not do it. Like
Yeah.
it's a return on investment question, right? Like
Yeah.
if you can run an AI model and it uses whatever amount of energy and it gets something done that would take me as a person like a week to do, and using a whole bunch of energy for a whole bunch of other things to do, then it's still worth it. That's still more efficient. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to measure that, but like it's not tautological that like AI takes a bunch of energy and therefore it's evil, like in the way that a lot of people seem to
Yeah.
treat it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Which, yeah, it's not tautological, but like, yeah, because there's these sides are so hyperbolic on either side of the issue that it's like, yeah, not being able to recognize like, yeah, it's not good for the environment, but it has some good aspects to it. And so it's like, where do you meet in the middle there? And I feel like the middle is probably the most likely outcome. It's what
Yeah,
I
and
would
like
put
there's a
my
difference
money onto.
between not good for the environment, you're Elon Musk building a data center in Arizona or wherever it is that is just like not following regulations because you have 150 generators that are
Right.
running on temporary basis and like polluting the air with exhaust and noise, and just you don't care because you're Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and it
Is
takes
it
a lot of
like,
compute power to run an AI model, like, and therefore it's like,
sorry, is the one in Arizona the one that he stole from the Cards Against Humanity people, or is that
no,
something else?
that's a that's that's the SpaceX space
Ah,
down on the
yes.
border, I think.
Ah,
But
yes, that's
yes.
right, the SpaceX space. I was like, didn't Elon Musk steal property from Cards Against Humanity? That was a thing that happened. So,
Yeah, that was for SpaceX, and I don't think it
uh,
was a data center. I think it was some like SpaceX build space stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, Elon Musk clearly just doesn't care about following regulations when building his
Uh,
facilities at all, like even less so than normal
hmm.
corporate world. So
Sad.
yeah, like you can be really bad, and then you can be, it's expensive, but like it's expensive in terms of energy or money or et cetera. Depends on like what you're buying with the expense, right? Like, and if it takes 50 people like many months to do an analysis that an AI can do in 30 seconds using a whole bunch of energy for that 30 seconds, I guess, like more than if they were just searching the internet, but like it accomplished something super like that would take a lot more effort. That is still a net positive. Like,
Yeah.
can it do that? That's a question. And I think that's not true. And that's not what it's doing most of the time.
No.
But like, I think it is physically possible for AI to accomplish things that are net
like
positive.
There's a cost there's a cost benefit analysis, and there definitely is a benefit in certain places, but it's like one side only sees the benefit, the other side only sees the costs.
Yes,
and
exactly.
and it's just
so it's like how do we do a real analysis of like which parts of this are worth it that we should be investing in, and which parts are really problematic and we should worry about, when anyone on either side is like, no, either we just need to hit the gas 100% or it's a complete fraud and we shouldn't worry about it. Like, how do we have these conversations on this podcast? That's how we have these conversations. So
yeah.
Hopefully some other places too, but
hopefully some other places.
That's my struggle, is that I think we need to have a lot of those conversations because there are a lot of real problems that people are not talking about because they're not acknowledging. The other side has points at any point. So so that's the AI discourse, which we'll probably refer back to a bunch in the future, because I think I already referred to it in the past a little bit too.
Indeed.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Fast and Broken podcast. I'm Carly Rector. If you would like to support my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter at carlyrector.substack.com.
And I'm Teresa Kramer. If you want to hear my voice on your products, you can visit my voiceover website at teresakramer.com.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, leave us a review, because it helps us know people are listening and helps more people find the podcast. See you next week.
Bye.